Get connected with Take Two Radio on Facebook or Twitter at Take Two Radio. For email updates on future shows, follow at Blog Talk Radio. For previous episodes, upcoming guests, and more, visit Take2Radio.com.
Hi, this is Dave Roundtree, co-author of the soon-to-be-released Demon Street USA, author of Paranormal Technology, an all-around science geek in the paranormal. And when I'm not doing anything, I sit around and chuckle to the antics of the Malliard Report.
The opinions expressed on the Malliard Report are those of the host and participants and are not intended to and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any simulcasting radio network or sponsor. All listeners are advised to make their own decisions.
It's the Malliard Report. Yeah, the Malliard Report. The paranormal talk radio show with Jim Malliard as your host. See what life beneath any paranormal activity. Go inside a world that others don't want to see. It's the Malliard Report. Yeah, the Malliard Report.
Welcome to the Malliard Report, the fastest hour in paranormal talk radio. I'm your host, Jim Malliard. Tonight's sponsor is Spectrum Light, some of the best IR boosters available. Works wonderfully well with Sony night shot cameras. Visit SpectrumState.com or follow them on Twitter at AU Paranormal, or follow me on Twitter at iTalkParanormal. John, are you on Twitter?
Hello?
Yeah, John, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
What's your Twitter name? Since I just threw out my sponsor and my Twitter name, what's your Twitter name?
My tour name?
Twitter.
Oh, Twitter.
Yeah.
It's at JSW819.
I know that's kind of a weird question to start with, but that's where I just start sometimes with people.
No, that's okay. I like weird questions.
Okay, so we were just talking a little bit before we came on air about how long they've been doing this, and I just looked at the email. I was reading back the thread of emails between us, and you've been waiting over a year to be on my show. What's wrong with you?
I don't know what's wrong with me. If you'd have to ask my wife that, and you'd have her on for 2 hours. So, no, I contacted you because I don't want to blow smoke in your ear, but you've got a very good reputation out there, and you've got great brand awareness, and this is a very interesting field. And if you have really avid listeners, those are the kind of people I would like to reach. I've done other radio shows that I can't name some of them, but they were so completely unprofessional that you just wouldn't believe it.
Oh, you can name them. I'm sure they're not listening.
They probably are.
No,
in my luck, they are.
I actually believe they probably are because, well, anyways. Because some of those, how do I say this, more known people in this field will avoid my show.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of some of the reasons you were talking about. And it's not being strong in a brand. So I've got to start by asking you, or mentioning this, you're a skeptic, which is kind of another reason that some people just personally avoid you because we don't necessarily agree. So I just want to put that on the table for everybody that's listening tonight. So you have go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I have my entire life, and I'm 67 years old, I have been an incredible skeptic. I've led a very normal life, and, anything that was beyond anything that I could understand or touch, I didn't believe in. So when someone would say something about, ghosts or telekinesis or palm reading, I would laugh my pants off, and I would say, that's the biggest load of crap I've ever heard in my life, and anyone who believes in any of that stuff is obviously completely crazy. And that's what I thought about all of this stuff. I took the very straight and narrow. I have always been a devout atheist my entire life. I was basically brought up to be that way because that's what my parents are. But like I said, anything slightly out of the ordinary, I didn't believe it. So when this stuff started to happen to me, I really couldn't believe it. And still to this very day, I have even though I completely believe in what happened, I don't believe it. When I think back, I know it's all real to me, but I still have to question it. And I question it every day because it was so far beyond my belief system, and it just took me so much by surprise. And at first, in several of my episodes of doing this, I thought I was hallucinating. I thought someone had played a trick on me, that they had, put something in some of my medication or something. I'm diabetic, so I have to shoot insulin. And I figured, what am I shooting, LSD tonight? For my head to go to all these places. So not until I really, really saw what was going on and began to learn things did it occur to me that, this is really happening. This isn't a bunch of baloney. But then I would think about who I am, and I'd say, but I can't believe this stuff. That's not me. It took a long time, and I still think back and say to myself, this is completely unbelievable. To a point where sometimes I get embarrassed by it. When people ask me about the book, I do get embarrassed by it because I just think it's completely unbelievable. But I got to say that I'm very, very, very happy that it happened to me because it really, really did change my perspective on a million different things. If for anything else, for nothing else, it changed my perspective on how I see things and how I think about things. And I can actually walk into the paranormal part of the bookstore without laughing my ass off.
Well, I see some books in that paranormal section. Oh, wait, never mind. I've got to behave.
Yes, I know what you mean.
There are some people out there that seriously just try to make a buck, and that's horrible. But anyways, I'll save that for another show.
Well, I'll tell you, in New York City, where I live, you can't go down a block without seeing a store where you go in, you get your palm read, you meet a clairvoyant, they sell you all kinds of crap. I mean, it's all over the place. And, 99.9% of that is a fraud. But there's so many people willing to believe something like that they'll shell the money out.
Right. And
that's something that I spoke to these people about on the other side that I met.
So what do they tell you? So what do they tell you? What do they tell you about that kind of stuff? We'll just focus on palm reading because I think that's just probably one of the most ridiculous things out there.
Well, and from what I learned, most of it, it's 99.9% is a complete fraud. These people are very, very, very talented. They have incredible intuition. They know how to read you. They know how to look at your glasses, whether or not you're perspiring, if you bite your fingernails. They read you like a book, and they know what to tell you. And if they get on a hot streak, they can tell, and they pursue it. And they get people coming back over and over and over again. Because people just want to know these kind of things. People are so desperately in search of what's going to happen to them. Is the girl they're with going to cheat on them? Can they get in touch with dead loved ones? Even if they don't believe it, they want to believe a little of it. And in case it's like a lot of these people who go to church once or twice a year, because just in case they want to be down with the Lord. So, I'm not saying that these people believe in the palm readers, but they go to them. Now, in what I learned through my, I don't know if you're too familiar with my book, But I met, I'll have to say, 1.5 people on the other side who I became very friendly with. They were extremely nice. They had a sense of humor, which at first I couldn't believe. And I found I could say anything to them. And they were the ones that told me that it's all a fraud, but there are some that are 100% legitimate. And they can see the future. They can talk to loved ones. They can be in touch with anything and everything at any time. That they do exist, but they're extremely rare. And if any of them were to come out and say, I'm one of the only ones, no one would believe them anyway. And this all goes back to the science that I learned that governs all of this. There's nothing magical about any of this. It's all based on real hard science. The whole thing, the whole afterlife, everything that happens to us, it's all science.
Okay, well, just keep going then, because I'm intrigued how you, because there are so many people out there that say the afterlife has no science connecting. It's a connection. It's all spiritual. It's all.
Well, here's the thing. From what I learned, there's absolutely nothing remotely spiritual about it. And there is absolutely no heaven. There's absolutely no hell. If there is hell, it's where we are now. That's what is firmly believed. Now, the thing is this. I had my experience through a very small amount of people. As I said, 1.5. One of them is a half. And at that, if I have time, I'll explain what the half is. But, if I had met other people, I could have been told other things. When they have you there, they're in complete control of whatever you see, whatever you think, and anything like that. So my experience could be completely different from other people's experience. But to get back to the science part of it, which to me is what's fascinating, is that, and I'm going to begin this by some of the brainwashing I got. And this may get a little bit jumbled, but at the time of the Big Bang, going back 13, 14 billion years ago, when all of the particles were basically born out of nothingness, out of a vacuum, the universe expanded in the most incredible heat and pressures. You're talking about trillionths of a second, all of this happened. And in the very, very, very early part of the expansion, where there was the maximum pressure, very fundamental particles, which are the basic building blocks of everything, it doesn't get any smaller than that. There was a thing formed that they call the particle bundle, which is the key to life. Now, the particle bundle is made up of 4 ordinary particles that were fused together during this Big Bang. And these particle bundles are inert, they don't clump together, they don't interact with anything, and they're completely undetectable. Although they probably have been seen with the particle colliders, only no one knew what the hell they were looking at, because no one would even think in a million years of looking for these things. So here you have 4 particles that are bonded together in a way where they can't possibly be separated, unless maybe by a massive black hole that might be able to ruin these things. Now, these things are all over the universe. They're everywhere because they blew out with the expansion. Now, I'm going to switch over to human life. When we are conceived and we start to grow inside the womb, there are particle bundles all over the place, not doing anything. When we get to about the 7th month of gestation, and the brain is really pretty well formed, and all the electrical impulses are there, one of these particle bundles becomes activated inside of our body. They don't know where it is. It may be in the brain, it could be in your little toe. It doesn't matter. It's in your body. And your brain has complete control over the particle bundle. Now, what this particle bundle acts as is it's a little tiny computer. And it's there purely for memory. And which means that starting before you're born, any sensation you have, any memory of anything is just recorded in this thing. And as you get older and you start to experience life, everything you see, hear, feel, touch, taste, whatever, is recorded. So it's very similar to having a photographic memory, but a photographic memory on steroids. Now, this particle bundle has its own abilities because it's not restricted in its own regard. And it's not like it's alive or anything like that. It's not. It's completely dead, other than, it's about as live as a computer could be. However, when your brain, when you finally die, and there's no electrical activity left in the brain, this thing is free. Your brain no longer restricts it. And what it does is, I don't know if you've heard of quantum tunneling. And that's where particles jump in and out of existence, in and out of dimensions, and all that. And that's proven scientific stuff. If you want to read about quantum physics, which will drive you completely crazy, you'll read about this stuff. What happens is the particle bundle leaves your body and channels into another dimension. And that dimension is just about the same as this dimension. There are just slightly different electrical properties. We can't see that dimension, but that dimension can see us. Not that that means anything. But when this particle bundle, which is us now, it begins to tunnel, it is bombarded by photons. And what that does is, since we are now the particle bundle, we are blinded by light. And it's the memory of what light is that's blinding us. And you hear stories of NDEs and all of this, where they go through a tunnel towards a very bright light. That's what this is. Now, the other thing that's completely incredible and unbelievable about this is that from the center of the particle bundle out of the top is what's known as a signature vibration. So every activated particle bundle, which is within a person, has a signature vibration. And it's the same thing as a fingerprint, or let's say your DNA. Everyone has their own vibration. And your loved ones know what your vibration is because they've been around you your whole life. And that's why when you go over there, they're the first people generally who you see because they picked up on your vibration, because now you're you're on their side. Now, the thing that's very interesting is that paranormal abilities are, which they don't consider to be paranormal abilities, they're human abilities, are what really drive the afterlife. Because everything is thought and thought affecting things. Our brains are made to restrict the particle bundle. Because if they didn't restrict it, life wouldn't be anything like we know it. There probably wouldn't be, I don't know, people would be climbing up off walls. Everyone would be completely brilliant, and everyone would have just, unbelievable abilities. So, through evolution, it had to be completely restricted. That's how our bodies work. However, your brain is not a perfect machine. No one's is. And when the brain screws up and dysfunctions, different abilities are released. And what I was taught on the other side was that the reason we're so advanced is because of Savantism. We have a name for it, but we don't know what it really is. They don't understand how some people who are perfectly normal or who appear severely retarded can do amazing things. Like you've heard of Kit Peak.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy, they made the movie of The Rain Man.
Yes.
And when you read about him, he was a completely dysfunctional human being. Totally. However, he was an unbelievable genius. And they used to test him on different things that he could do. Like they would take a box of matches and maybe put 2 or 3 boxes of matches in their hand and throw them up in the air. And by the time those matches reached the floor, he would have counted them all already as they fell to the floor. Another thing he would do is he could read a book where his left eye would read the left page and his right eye would read the right page simultaneously. All the information would be processed, and he could tell you anything and everything he read, right down to the line of the page and the page number and everything. And this would go on for volume and volume and volume. And over the years, there have been a lot of these people with just unreal abilities. And no one in science can explain how these abilities are there. But they do feel that if so much as one person has an ability like this, it means that all people have the potential. It's not impossible. These people aren't aliens or something. And what it is, it's because the brain has dysfunctioned and it has allowed some of these special things to come through. Now, there are also people called mild savants. And mild savants are people like Beethoven, Einstein, Thomas Jefferson, and many, 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 many people who shaped civilization are minor savants. They all have a very incredible ability in 1 or 2 areas that outshine other people. So, without brain dysfunction and without these savants, we would probably be living in a very peaceful, uncomplicated world, maybe like it was in the 1600s or something like that. But the major advances have been because of these savants and what they were able to think of. And again, savants, they're all different types of stuff they can do. And they've discovered it in children where a child will hear a concert some child who's never, ever been able to play the piano, and then they go and they play it perfectly. What some people have said, oh, well, they must be, what is the word? The word escapes me. There's past life coming through. That's what it is, but it's not. Reincarnation, that's the word I was looking for. Because sometimes people can speak other languages they never spoke. They can just do things that they're not supposed to do. But it's because of the brain dysfunction allowing certain powers of the particle bundles to be released. Now, to get to the particle bundles in the afterlife would be a pretty dull place if all you had were your own memories. You'd be completely insulated. But what happens is that all memories are shared. You become part of a collective consciousness. You can be completely private if you want, or you just open yourself up, and everything in your mind, all of your experiences, become everyone else's experiences. Which means that if a child dies at 1 year old, let's say, they're not going to have an incredible memory bank. But they're going to be brought up to speed, and they're going to live a wonderful, beautiful life on the other side. From what I saw, it is absolutely wonderful, beyond belief, what life is like on the other side, because of the particle bundles and the memory sharing and all of the different things that you can do and the friends that you can make. If people really, really, really knew what was going on over there, and a lot of people do know, I'm not the only one who's been there, you get people jumping out of windows all over the place. Because suicide or anything like that doesn't stop you from going over there. You can get blown to smithereens and you still end up there, because nothing can destroy a particle bundle. You know, whether you're struck by lightning or annihilated by an atomic bomb, doesn't matter. You end up over there. Now, the way I got there, which was, 1 in a trillion, I really believe in meditation. And I got into meditation when I had cancer several years ago. And I had to sit and get chemotherapy, which was like torture. And you can't concentrate enough to read, and you're dizzy, and you're nauseous. But I was able to meditate myself out of it. And I wouldn't be anywhere. It was just a major loss of time for me. And I continued doing it because it was very relaxing, and people would say to me, oh, if you meditate like that, you probably have paranormal experiences. So what I would say to them is, I can't say over the air because you'd get shut off by the FTC. But I had some cute things to say to them about it.
I can imagine.
There's nothing paranormal about this. I'm just, this is a function of the brain. Anyone can meditate if you have the ability of concentration. So, to make a long story short, after I was all through the chemo and everything, I continued meditating. And very often I would do it before I would go to sleep. I love doing that. Turn the lights off, lie on my back on my pillow, and just lose my mind. And I would sleep beautifully. And part of my ritual was, before I go to sleep, I read books. And one of my favorite things is World War II history. I just read about just about everything you can read on it. One night, I'm reading a book about Iwo Jima. I get very tired, I meditate, and I wake up. I'm on Iwo Jima. I was having a bad dream. So I thought. It was the most fascinating dream I've ever had in my life. Because most of my dreams are ridiculous. They're stupid. I'm flying, or I find myself naked in the middle of Manhattan. All these weird things. But I was in the middle of a battle. I could smell everything. I could taste things. I saw horrendous things going on around me. And I was flattened down on the beach with this black sand, volcanic sand, next to another soldier who was crouched next to me, and he started talking to him. And I didn't think anything of it. It was part of the dream. So the next day, I remembered my dream, having breakfast, and I was amazed by it. I said, wow, that was really a cool dream. You know, I've never dreamt anything so real in my life. Well, that night, I continued reading my book, and I meditated, and I woke up in the same spot in my dream. And I wasn't thinking, when I was in my dream at that point, I didn't realize that I was dreaming the same dream over again. But it was a continuation of the dream. And I got to fire a Thompson submachine gun, and I started speaking a lot more to the guy next to me, who started telling me that I wasn't dreaming. And that I really remembered. And I figured, this is the next day, that I'd never heard of anyone dreaming the same sort of dream twice in a row, but anything is possible. And I said to myself, it was fascinating, it was horrifying, it was everything I've ever read about Iwo Jima, which is a pretty bad place. The next night, I was reading about Iwo Jima again, I guess kind of hoping I was going to have that dream. But as I say in my book, I opened my dream eyes in a completely different place. It was just as real as Iwo Jima. And it was frightening at first because I didn't know where the hell I was. I was in some sort of a metal cabin. I remember distinctly looking down and seeing rivets by my feet. It was very cold. And I heard guns going off. And then this guy, whose name was Lyle, who was actually my spirit guide, who was on Iwo Jima, came over to me laughing. And he said, "You'll never guess where you are." And I said, "I don't know where I am." I said, "I don't know what this is all about, and I don't know why I'm talking to you. I'm dreaming." And he said, "You're not dreaming." And he said, we're on B-25, and we're on a mission. We're going to Wilhelmshaven, and they're testing out, right, we're over the English Channel, and they're testing the 50 caliber machine guns. They're clearing them. That's what you're hearing. And I realized that because the tinkling I had been hearing were the shell casings falling on the metal inside the fuselage. And he went and he told me that I'm not dreaming, I'm in a very special place, and would I like to learn more? So I remember getting very angry, saying, you're completely, again, I can't put it in my normal language, but you're completely full of it. You're me. I'm talking to myself. Blah, 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 blah. And the dream ended, and it's all I thought about the next day. What the hell was going on? I started getting very worried. I thought there was something really, really, really wrong with me, that I would have these very strange dreams. And it started taking over my whole day. I became very unproductive. And I remember that the next evening I was at my mother's house, and we were going through a box of old pictures from when I was a little tiny kid. And I took a box of them home, and I had it on my bed, and I was looking through them. I grew up in Purchase, New York, which is a little very bucolic kind of a suburb. And I went to sleep. I meditated again. And I remember thought I was lying in bed, but I felt very warm, as though the sun was on me. And I was very, itchy around my shoulder area. Then I felt something like it was crawling on my face. It turned out I opened my eyes, put my hand up on my face, and I had a bug, some sort of a caterpillar. And I sat up, and I was in my old backyard. It was not to be believed. This Lyle had brought me to where I grew up. Only I didn't see Lyle at that point. So I got up, and I think if I remember correctly, I was crying in my dream because I couldn't believe it. It was so real. The sun was on me. It was freshly cut grass out on the lawn. I saw my old house, which was demolished it was taken by eminent domain years ago by the state. But here I was, where I grew up, in an area that I loved. I just couldn't believe it, and I got up and I started walking around. And of course I was dumbfounded. I didn't know what was going on. But I knew that I was enjoying myself immensely. And when I walked up towards the house, I heard a squeaking sound. And I looked over, and it's where my old jungle gym was, where I used to play with my brother and sister. And on the swing is this guy, Lyle. And I have to say that seeing him on my old swing got me really pissed off, because I thought it was a violation of this wonderful, wonderful dream to see this guy there who was telling me this junk that I wasn't dreaming. And I remember saying something to him like, you're invading my privacy, blah, 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 blah. And he said, look, I understand. He said, if you want, you can continue this dream. I'll go away. You'll never see me again, and you'll never dream like this again. He said, however, if you allow me to take the next step with you, I'll explain what's going on. So I was kind of like laughing. And at that point, I realized that I was dreaming, that I was lying in my bed asleep, but I was fully aware of where I was. And I was talking to this guy. And I said, sure, because I was humoring myself. And he said, just keep on meditating, and I will be able to get you. And, I meditated, and that's when it all started. I went back day after day after day after day. And he took me to the damnedest places. Because once you're with them, they have access to the particle bundle within your body and your signature vibration. And even though you haven't left your bed, you can travel anywhere all over the place. I guess it's kind of like an out-of-body experience. So he took me all over the place, and he taught me the damnedest things about life, about the particle bundle, about science, about how people think, about how the brain works. But mostly he taught me how the afterlife works. Then he introduced me to a woman. Her name is Betty. And she was about his age, roughly around 20 years old. She was actually beautiful, spunky. I absolutely fell madly for the girl. She was his girlfriend. Now, the strange thing is that she was not a human being. She was what's known as a thought construct. I know this sounds like bull, and I thought it was. She was his girlfriend in real life. They grew up together in Wisconsin. They were going to get married. On June 6, 1944, Lyle was in the first wave on Omaha Beach. And like everyone else in the afterlife, he was dead. He had been shot before he even got out of the water. Now, all he had been thinking about was the love of his life, girl Betty, who had seen him off when he went to England. She was there with his parents. She was like part of the family already. And when he died, all he could think about was her. And what happened was when you're on the other side, if you think hard enough, you can construct someone who you can talk to and who you can see. Now, it's very strange, and I could hardly believe, just to backtrack a little, how you see. But you see through the memory of seeing. And I could see them clearly. They could see me clearly. And they're basically quantum particles, which means they are so small that there is no equipment with today's technology that could ever see them, ever. Maybe sometime in the future we'll be able to see things like this. But when you're there, everything looks normal size because that's what memory is. You see things as you remember them. And you see people on how they looked when they felt they looked their best. And one thing, as Lyle told me, you don't see people up in the afterlife who look like they're 90 years old. Everyone looks like they're in the 20s because that's what they project. Those are the happiest times of their life. And that's what they look like. So getting back to this Betty, she was what's known as a thought construct. But she was a very rare thought construct because she tunneled with him in his mind over to the afterlife. So as he told me, she was somewhat of a celebrity over there. Now, people over there are just like they are here. There's no difference. They're amazed by celebrities. They discuss things. They have their own beliefs. You're just the same person as what you were. If you hated certain kinds of people, if you're a bigot, you're still a bigot when you're over there. You may learn how ridiculous it is, but you are over there who you were over here. And it doesn't matter how bad you are. I mean, Hitler is over there. And as I learned, he has plenty of followers. And, he's got the entire Nazi regime with him because they stick together. But you don't have to interact with them if you don't want to. If you want to, you can join right in with them because they hold themselves completely open to anyone who wants to share their memories. And those are pretty evil memories if you dare share them. So this Betty was somewhat of a celebrity because she was a very weird thought construct. People will thought construct their pets because somehow pets don't make it there. So Betty was like an extension of him. And basically wherever he was, Betty was. And I got to know her very, very, very well. Again, she's a wonderful person. And she could think on her own. For all intents and purposes, she was a person. And she was wonderful to talk to, and she was a wonderful teacher. Lyle was not a good teacher. He'd screw up all the time. I'd make fun of him. She would correct him. And it turned into us having a really, really great relationship together. Because it wasn't like, I figured that it's all right, if I'm in the afterlife, everyone up there, they're going to be playing harps, they're going to have halos, they're going to be saying thee and thou. These are just regular people who would curse like truck drivers. They would pass gas. Everything that you would remember you did, you do there. Which means, Lyle was constantly lighting cigarettes. He was a chain smoker. And I would tease him about it, and he would say to me, "You ain't going to kill me." And we had this great banter going back and forth. Now, a lot of the time, they were trying to brainwash me because they knew that I was an atheist. And they said, "Look, we understand and we respect it, but we want to teach you otherwise, that there is something to really believe in." I said, "I'm sorry, I don't believe in anything. You taught me that there's absolutely nothing religious here, that this is purely scientific, blah, blah, blah." They said, "Yes, it's completely true. Everything is scientific." I said, "But it had to start somewhere." And I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" They said, "Well, look at the particle bundle. That was created with the Big Bang, and it was created for one thing alone, to create life. So the universe knew that life was going to be created, and everything was made to support life. They said, look at the world, look at the position. If we were less than 1% off with our orbit or with the gases or the general physics of the universe, they said, life would never happen. And I told them I believe in coincidences, and they said, this goes beyond coincidence. They said, there may not have been a God, like people, some guy in a robe who answers your dreams and everything, but there was most certainly a creator and some kind of an intelligence in the universe that allowed all this stuff to happen. By the time they were through with me, I have to say that I believed it, because they showed me so much proof of that. And to me, the biggest piece of proof was the particle bundle, because that was not a random thing. That happened at the moment of the Big Bang. But something created that to create life. And the particle bundle may very, very well be what drives aliens and any other kind of life way, way out in the universe. Because the particle bundle just does not hang around the Earth. It's everywhere. Now, I know this all sounds pretty damn crazy. Now, one of the things Lyle did was, in the early days of my going out there, he said that I'm going to not be able to come out for a week. And he said during that week, he wants me to go to either the library or the bookstore, and he wants me to get a very introductory book on quantum science and read it, and on paranormal behavior. And I said to him, look, I'll read, but I ain't reading anything on paranormal, because I won't be able to keep a straight face. And he said to me, if you ever want to come back here, you have to do me this favor. You have to go read those books. So I was so intrigued by everything over there that I went and I read them. I was fascinated by the quantum books, even though I didn't understand most everything in the books. The most that you understand is that it's all completely ununderstandable. And you know that it drove Einstein completely crazy and most other scientists. But when I read the capabilities of quantum science, I realized at that moment that anything that I thought was impossible is not impossible at all. Because it spoke about quantum tunneling, it spoke about quantum entanglement, which is something that science cannot explain now, and they don't even want to go near it, even though they proved that what it does. So I realized that there was a lot going on that I didn't know that made a lot of sense now from what I was learning over there. Then when I read the paranormal book, I believe the first one I read was by Lawrence O'Shan, who seemed to me like a very straight, normal kind of a scientific teacher. Instead of thinking that it was a pile of horse, whatever, I started getting very interested in it, and I started looking at other paranormal books. Some were laughable. I mean, they were just beyond. But a lot of them, what they ended up talking about was quantum mechanics, and how so much of this stuff is possible because of quantum mechanics. They talked about collapsing particle waves, from wave to particles, all of these different things that happen that no one can explain, but they know that there's a whole other world out there governed by quantum. And we're just beginning to use it in different types of products. And when quantum computers finally become useful, it's going to be mind-boggling what they're going to be able to do. So armed with this knowledge, I came back there, and I said to him, Lyle, I'm not laughing at any of this stuff anymore after what I read. And then he started teaching me about things like neutrinos. I had heard about them, and he told me to go read about them. And I realized that a lot of the stuff that I was doing in my dreams was transferring over to my real life. But I still felt that it could have all been some impossible kind of a dream. It could have been some ridiculous hallucination. Maybe there was something really wrong with me. And I kept telling him, you know what, Lyle, I like you, I like everything that's happening here, but this could all be completely fake. Because I'm not built to believe in this. You know, I'm fascinated by everything. I see that there are things you're telling me that I'm seeing in books and places that he was taking me that I found in books that I didn't know existed. I still felt that maybe these are things that I had read at some time in my life and they were just coming back to me. And he said to me that he was going to think about it, and he did think about it, and he said that he thinks that he has a way that he could prove it to me, that I was, you know, in the afterlife. And I could hardly believe it, but he explained what he was going to do. He was going to take me in, now, afterlife time is completely different than time here. Everything goes very, very fast in the afterlife. Because if I was dreaming, I may have been dreaming for maybe a minute, but it was several hours in his time, which is why I could learn so much and get so much done while I was over there. So he took me back here. He told me to get very, 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 very tired one night. He told me to eat very bland food, and he told me to put a tarp on my bed. And I figured, what I'm not going to say it, this is going on here. He said, other people, he said, not through him, have brought people back. And I will, by the way, explain to you how I got back there. I forgot to do that. He said, what you're going to experience, he said, will more than likely make you sick to your stomach. He said, and if you get sick to your stomach in the afterlife, you're sick to your stomach in bed, and you could vomit all over everything. So I figured, great. What's this all about? Because I figured, psychosomatically, after what he's telling me, I could get sick in my dream and I could puke all over everything. And he explained to me that when I would open my dream eyes on the other side, I would be in this dimension, but I would be in his time. He said, so everything that I was going to see here could completely screw up my equilibrium because people would be frozen in time, but just barely moving. And sure enough, he took me back. He took me up to, you won't know where this is, it's East End Avenue in Manhattan. I lived there many years ago. He took me back, and it was a snowy night, and the snow was frozen in the air. And people were frozen where they were walking, but only slightly moving. You could see the mist hanging out of their mouths. You could see them in mid-stride. And it really did. I didn't get sick, but it screwed my mind up.
Okay, hold on. I've got to stop you right here because I've got you for about another minute.
I've used up all the time?
Yeah, so you've used up all of our time. So where can people find the book and find you and all this other stuff? So if they're interested in getting the book, we can get them to that.
Okay, it's both a Kindle book and it's a paperback. They should go to my website, which is John, John, S as in Sam, Weiss, WEISS.com. You will be able to link directly to Amazon, and you'll be able to find out a lot more about me, my experiences, and my book. Now, this went by so quickly, I think that you're on air time.
It's just amazing how fast it went. But
I didn't even get to tell you how I got there.
Well, we'll have to do it again sometime soon.
I would love to.
All right, John, thanks.
Thank you very much, and you're a real pro. And by the way, I like your jingle.
Thank you.
Okay.
And that's... sorry, John, I cut you off there. That's john-s-weiss, everybody. Simply amazing. Tonight's show is brought to you by Spectrum Light. Visit SpectrumState.com. Goodness, I've got a minute and some odd seconds to finish my final thought. I find it still extremely stupid that we are talking about paranormal unity. It's almost 2015. I keep hearing this common goal crap going around. I've seen it again today, and that's what I'm talking about, because I've seen it again today. There is no common goal, gang. I know I've harped on this on my show before. I did a show on leadership 2 years ago. I've done a show on standards last year. And it's not getting through. It's not getting heard. People still think there's this common goal, whatever it may be. It's not out there. It's not happening. And it shouldn't happen. Why? Because as free thinkers, we need to think outside the box. We need to trust ourselves to investigate in the methods and the standards that we want. And with this process of figuring out whose standards and whose methods work better will eventually get you to that goal. Now, having a whole bunch of people in a Facebook group agreeing with each other that every blurry picture is paranormal activity isn't helping anybody. Sorry, that's just how I feel. And I know most of you agree, but there's a few of you out there who don't, and I need you to think about this before you share that Facebook banner once again. That's tonight's Malliard Report, the fastest hour in Paranormal Talk Radio. Talk to you soon. Real soon.
Well, before we flip that on-air sign to the off position, a quick reminder. For all things about the report, previews, and reviews, go to italkparanormal.com. That's italkparanormal.com. Good night.
It's the Paranormal Show. The fastest hour in Paranormal Talk Radio. The Paranormal Show. The fastest hour in Paranormal Talk Radio. Brought to you by the Malliard Report. Visit TMR247.com to hear more.
Get connected with Take Two Radio on Facebook or Twitter at Take Two Radio. For email updates on future shows, follow at Blog Talk Radio. For previous episodes, upcoming guests, and more, visit take2radio.com.